positions from an education standpoint, and we wouldn't want to mess that up. And we wouldn't want anyone to mess it up for us either. So we just need to be just a little ahead of where all of that's going. I think, you know, we obviously try to stay ahead of what's going on, but maybe have more people thinking about how that might affect us within her.
So David, we'll look forward to seeing how you put that plan together, and we can add it to our agenda. So at each meeting, we'll start to get an update, and that will hopefully get a momentum moving. The second objective under strategic planning is to implement the school building needs plan. And I think that if we refer to the conversation we had with Warren tonight, Wayne tonight, it speaks to the need for the town to get the facts on the cost of renovating and repairing versus building new. And as David has pointed out here, that our statement of interest for middle and high school are updated and resubmitted, and they are in the hands of the MSBA. So we are moving forward with that plan, but not at the expense of continuing to maintain our buildings.
Yeah, just a point on that. We do have statements of interest on file, and I've yet to hear back on what the status is. I put an email to Representative Jones and Senator Tarr asking them to see if they could get some inside view from MSBA as to what's their next step. How are they going to act on the 2009 statement of interest? And I heard back from both offices. Senator Tarr would like to have a tour of the middle and high school. I know Representative Jones has already done that. So I'm going to try to arrange that in the next several weeks. But interestingly enough, just last week, MSBA, the building authority, sent out a letter to all superintendents saying, if you would like to update your statement of interest for 2010. So it's a little bit disconcerting to get that letter when they haven't taken any the status on 2009.
But didn't they come back somewhere and say they didn't have any money?
No, they've not classified the statement of interest for 2009. So in 2008, some bachelor school got money, but other schools in 2008 received notice of proceed to feasibility study or
Didn't
proceed
Woburn
to
get some money though recently?
it was just announced,
Right.
but they were included
In
in 2008.
Right, in Manchester, Essex too, right? The high
Well,
school?
Manchester Essex was similar to
Oh, the same category,
the
but-
bachelor
okay.
school.
Oh, go right ahead.
David, we reactivated the secondary school building committee, right?
Yes, it's
Are
still
we gonna schedule a meeting
Well, they've had some meetings,
recently?
not recently, but in the spring they met.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that, am I
Are you
the
back?
liaison?
I think
I'm
you're
the
the
liaison,
liaison.
so I just
Yeah.
wanted to know when the next meeting was. Maureen made a statement about, Wayne was here tonight, and we have these repairs that have to be considered, and we can't just ignore them. But he was talking about some of these things 3 to 5 years out. I think we need to know, from our perspective, and I know we can't do that without knowing where the school building assistance committee is on it, but I think we have to know, is it realistic for us to move forward on a new project, or isn't it? Because if we're gonna start spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, actually millions of dollars in some of the projects at the middle school and the high school, we need to have some idea of whether or not realistically we can go forward with the high school project.
And I think what we need to do, and we did this in the many versions of the batch versus the Swamp Pond renovation versus new, is we need to educate the community on the needs, the repair needs, and the educational upgrades that we need, so in the cost, so they can understand that building new is more cost efficient.
Yeah, but I mean, and I think we need to resurrect that whole discussion, because if we don't, then we're gonna be starting to pour, over the next few years, some significant monies if we can, obtain them into these buildings.
Yes.
And we have to ask ourselves if there's a realistic possibility with the high
Right.
school, should we be doing
Right,
that?
I mean, certainly roof repairs need to be made, so there's not further damage done, but do you hold off on
The
the windows,
windows.
even though will yield an efficiency, because in 3 or 5 years, we'll be moving on a new project, so.
Well, the windows, you mentioned something tonight, they didn't go into detail, that scared me a little bit. You mentioned about the boiler at the high school.
Right,
And I think that's in here
It is.
somewhere, and that's a big cost.
it's
So I mean, if you look at the renovations that were made, and now it's hard to believe, it seems like just yesterday, but it's been 20 years since we did the renovations of the high school. And some of those renovations included, infrastructure type things that probably now are getting like the roof and the other systems at the high school, they're probably gonna need some attention, so.
Right, and then there's always that educational piece. We can
Right.
fix all the roofs and we can make the windows efficient, but at the expense of upgraded labs. I mean, we don't have real chemistry and biology
No.
labs, so.
Yes.
So we need to keep that focus on improving the facilities from an educational standpoint as well. So, yes, I think we
Okay.
should move forward, or at least the committee should be charged to put together, while we're waiting for MSBA, a comparison. Yes, start selling it now, before we actually have to bring it to the voters for a new project.
I think the way Jerry puts it, of what's the reality of going forward with a project is the right way to put it. Because we need to determine, are we really going to be able to build a new high school or middle school? Or do we have to sink $5 million into these buildings? I
Well-
think we need to do that at some
And-
point.
And we
here's
need
a-
that number.
Here's a
Right.
critical point. If MSBA next week contacts me, saying, you have a green light, or at least a yellow light, to proceed to the next step, which would be probably
Schematic
a
design.
modified feasibility study. And Brad Dorr, the architect, came to see me 2 weeks ago. We had a discussion about what would happen if we go to the next step. Beyond that, there'll be some hard decisions to be made, because if you look at some of the other communities that got in on 2008, let's take Woburn, for example, if MSBA gives you that go-ahead,
Could be able to ready to
you
run.
better be
do
ready.
it when you're
And so
done.
when some of the projects that are already in that next phase, they're now realizing that they cannot get the vote.
Right.
And MSBA is telling them, you have one chance, and if you don't take that chance, we're taking that money away and we're putting it in another place.
That's why I think we need to get to the point where realistically, as Maureen says, the community's re-educated and everybody knows what the circumstances are, and we know whether or not we have the support to go forward. If that call comes, we need to be ready to go.
So,
We need to start selling immediately.
right, why are we moving forward? What are the cost comparisons? And, so Jerry, if you contact, Chuck Carucci, still chairs that committee, and, let's see if they'll take on the task of putting those numbers with Wayne and your
Well, and they've
office.
been working on creating a website, and doing some nice work on that. But again, part of it has just been, given the economics,
Right,
and all that's been going on, it just basically came to a screeching halt,
yep.
for that reason.
Right, and this will give a focus for the interim, look at some of the repair needs in these buildings and start putting a price tag to them and, making the case.
What do we need, an inventory of needs?
Yes.
There you go.
Well, if we look at our
Right.
capital
And-
plan we project out over
Well,
10 years, pretty much they're
Yeah.
listed,
What
most
if
of
we
them
did
listed as the
something like
major
what the
ones.
finance committee did back about 6 months ago, where they had articles every week or every other week or so in the transcript talking about some issue of the budget? So what if we put together a couple articles that laid out what the real costs are, especially what are the inventory of, capital needs, projects for our schools, and put a couple articles together and put those in the paper, and maybe have, not a formal public hearing, but just have an open meeting where
Forum.
people can, a
Yeah.
forum where people can come
Great.
and talk about it.
I
think we
like
need
it.
to get some
Do you wanna
momentum.
work through that?
I don't want to belabor this too much, but you notice the pictures here that show the bulges in the roof.
Right,
They show the water around it, or the water around it holding it down.
Right.
In a normal hurricane, so that it won't lift off and blow away. But if you have a quote-unquote dry hurricane, you have a lot of wind without the rain, then you don't have that extra ballast around, and you very easily could get kind of like an airfoil kind of an effect.
Do some real
That
damage.
right
Yeah.
off. Because what that bulge is telling you is that the fully adhered roof is fully adhered to the insulation, but not
Not
to
the
the
roof.
substrate.
Right.
And the deck, and that's a precarious situation.
Great, so we'll get some momentum on that project. The third objective, to develop and maintain effective management. There's 3 continuing activities and 3 new ones, including a revision on the new teacher induction and mentoring program and a job description for a human resource assistant. And we'll revisit that during budget time. The 4th objective, to work with the Director of Pupil Personnel Services to support services to students. There's a couple of new initiatives here. David would like to reorganize the staffing for more effective coordination and delivery of services, and to work with the director and the high school principal to develop a postgraduate survey. And this is a new catchphrase, David, that I've read throughout. Research the response to intervention model. Do you want to speak to that
Sure.
briefly?
RTI, or response to intervention, you're seeing many schools taking a look at not just inclusion in special education, but having a very defined response to any problem or any issue, learning issue that a student may demonstrate. And so then you have a planned way each time how you're going to respond to that. And so it can be just a discussion level with a team of teachers, and that's what we do at collaboration time, all the way to, well, now this child needs to be referred to special education. So it's not just special education when a referral shows up, but it's taking on our collaboration and inclusion and making sure that every student almost has his or her own individualized learning plan.
Awesome. That's a huge undertaking. Okay, the 5th objective on strategic planning is to work with the business manager and the committee in the overall planning, development, implementation, and monitoring of the annual budget for the school department. And that's ongoing. Except there is one item that we've had on here for a couple of years, and I actually want to nail down a commitment. It's the Education Foundation. I'd like to really, David, commit to holding an open house by invitation type of forum sometime before the holidays, late in the fall. And I'll work with you on what that would look like.
Okay.
But I'd like to at least identify a half dozen people that could commit to starting the investigation and research of what it takes. I have a couple of names, and we can discuss it as a group and give them to the superintendent. But let's define what you think that board would look like. I know we don't have any oversight, but
Right.
we will be the group that gathers these people together. And it's not necessarily citizens in North Reading, it could be people in local businesses, somebody from Lotus, so let's really get that up and running. The 6th objective, to work with the Director of Curriculum and Technology to implement the district-wide technology plan. The 7th one, to continue to promote global education and expand partnerships with school districts outside of the United States. And a number of these initiatives are on hold for now.
Mainly
Which
due to
is-
budget issues.
Yes, yeah. So knowing David's passion for those exchange programs, I
Yeah,
expect
I
it
mean,
will.
there's a great program that actually started out of the Burlington Public Schools. It's called Pathways to China. They're actually expanding it now to include India. And what it does is it for a fee, it pulls together teachers who will receive specific training on, let's say, running an exchange program with China, and then it leads to actually sending a group of students from your district. What is nice about it is that you're doing it collaboratively with several other school districts, so it's not just North Reading trying to kick off its program. There is a membership fee that we would have to support, and it could be in the range of around $10,000 to. But again, what you're getting out of that would be the teacher